Where'd that music come from? Me? Oh, yeah. Well, here we are. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to respond to a community question from a man named Gary. It's way cooler than you think with the name Gary. Garys are cool, though. I know several Garys that are really cool. And we're going to tackle a conundrum of a question, which is, let me give you a little background to Gary's question. We've got a property under contract. We have a hankering to buy this home, and it will be one that my family calls home. And it's the only home that we've purchased except for a rental property. We started off on great footing. The lender pre-approved us for 3% down, and that's great. That saves us enough room in our budget to buy the furnishings we'll need for our home and do all the other things that we need to do. So awesome. Until it's not, because the lender just came back and said, your debt to income is all messed up. We can't do this. We're really sorry. When we got your tax returns, when we got your financials, we thought we were going to be able to move forward with the 3% down, but now we're not going to be able to. So we're going to have to do this higher down payment. We're going to have to do this other thing, this other thing, this other thing. So Gary comes to us today and says, what's going on? Why is my debt to income off the charts when I have the only mortgage that I have is a rental property, and the rental property cash flows like a king? Why is your debt to income like off tilt? Why? So let's just dive a little deeper into Gary's conundrum and say this. Gary's property is rented out for about double his debt service, meaning, and by debt service, I don't actually mean, so debt service, we're talking like what he owes the bank every month in terms of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. His home is rented for double that. So why, with such an ample and healthy debt coverage, or what would be called debt service coverage ratio, why would debt to income be a problem? Why? And this is near and dear to my own heart because I have fought with lenders on the same thing. As a self-employed person and as someone that has a number of loans at any given time, I have been in the situation where I've constantly been begging, pleading with lenders to explain to me how on earth a cash flowing residential real estate portfolio could be considered debt upside down. Or why do you look at it and say your debt to income ratio is so off tilt when we have sufficient income to offset debt, maintenance, repairs, and still have cash flow left over? Why? How is that possible? Well, let's dive in and see if we can get you some answers. Gary, thanks for coming to us via text. You have shared, I still don't fully understand the whole debt to income ratio thing with the investment property being the reason. Okay, so here's what the bank does. Gary, let's talk cash flow. So they're going to say you've got $1,300 a month in rent coming in. Well, they're going to discount that by 0.75, by 25% just on the face of it. So they see, if you see what I see, then you see this backwards. That's vexing. We'll figure that out before the next one. Then they're going to see, okay, a discounted of $975, and then they're going to subtract out your debt service and anything else that they know. And then they're going to say, okay, all of that is great now, but we're going to turn around and sell this loan. And lenders are so scared. They are literally like the most fearful breed of people I know, which is ironic because they're lenders. They work in this industry. It's crazy. And this is not all of them. This is just all of them. So, but the only people more fearful than lenders are the underwriters. The people, and that's actually the people in the, in the scenario that get paid to be afraid. And an underwriter is trying to exercise this extreme amount of diligence to match the file that the lender is creating with the underwriting guidelines of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mac, Gary Sue, Jerry Malone, whoever else out there, BlackRock, China, whoever else out there is buying residential mortgages. They're bundling them, putting them in tranches. And if you haven't seen The Big Short, then watch it and you'll know what all these things are about. So why does the underwriter fear so much? Well, because they've been bit over and over and over and over again. And so these underwriters who are ultimately just trying to make sure that what the bank loans on is sellable to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Sue, Terry Joe, whoever it is that is the probable buyer. They're trying to make sure that it's something that will actually be purchased by those people. So they're going to look at anything that smells off to the end buyer, and they're going to presuppose a problem. They're going to say, no. Freddie Mac doesn't like this, so we gotta do it differently. So in your particular case, what they're going to say is, hey, you might have $1,300 a month in cash flow or in rent, but we got to just discount that 25%. And also, since this is a relatively new rental, it's not on your last tax return. Like, you don't have a cash flowing asset on your last tax return. So we got to treat this as new, and what is new is scary, and we don't know if you're going to survive, and you might be like all those other flounders out there, and you might just go away. So we can't really, well, this lender, like Freddie Mac, doesn't like rentals that aren't on your last tax return. So we're going to have to not match with him. We're going to have to go over here to Ginnie Sue. And these are, I'm literally just throwing out the names of the underwriters. I don't actually know which one, has whatever leanings, but one of them is not going to like a rental that doesn't show up on your last tax return. The other one is going to use a greater discount factor when they're taking your rent and they're discounting it. Another one may have a totally different set of preferences, but any way you cut it, if your rental properties are showing up on your debt, like basically on your credit report, if a debt is showing up as guaranteed by you, now it might not be in your personal name, it could actually be in a business, but if it's hitting your personal credit score, then it's something that the bank is going to have to take into account as a personal liability. And so for you, since you own a long-term rental property, the bank is looking at that and they're saying, well, it's not on your last tax return. And since it's not on your last tax return, that precludes us from using this investor. So we'll use this investor. This investor is willing to do it, but we have some overlays. We have some fear provisions so the investor feels safeguarded in buying the loan. And so one of those provisions is, hey, instead of 3% down, we need you to do 5% down. Why? Because from a technical standpoint, why is because that's what the investor says. Why does the investor say that? Because the single most likely person to lose a home is one with 3% down. It's a fact. The more of the home you own, statistically, the less likely you are to walk away from it and go, we're out. So the investor that you're being steered towards, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the investor you're being steered towards does not do that type of loan at 3% down. We'll do it at 5% down, but for you, that means you got to come up with 2% more down. And in reality, if you look at the same scenario in a year after your next tax returns, you might come up with a completely different result. But as of right now, what they're doing is they're seeing your rental property on your personal liability sheet, and therefore they've got to consider it as debt. And good news for you, it's not a car loan, it's a debt that performs. But then the question is, how are they treating the performance? And because it's not on your last tax return, because it's a newer investment, they're taking the face value of the rent, they're decreasing it by 25%. And then they're saying, okay, you got this level of debt. Here's your service of the debt. Here's your discounted cash flow. And it just means that it's tighter. And so when they look at the added debt of your new purchase, for you, and you're looking at about $1,750, I think, as an added debt obligation. So then they say, okay, now you got an added $1,750, but because it's not a rental property, it doesn't have a lease in place, they're not able to factor in income from that property. And so they're going to say, okay, what is your cost of living? Like, what is your hard debts? And then we got to take any kind of residual obligation left from these other things that we had to bring in because they're on your personal tax return or your personal credit score. Now, what are we looking at debt to income wise? So they take your income and they compare your level of total debt service every month. And if that gets north of what that lender is comfortable with, and by lender, I mean like conventional loan lenders are comfortable up to a certain level. FHA loan lenders are comfortable to a different level, but they have different repercussions in the loan process. So that's why your income property is affecting your current purchase. Is they're looking at it and saying, hey, this debt, even though it's offset, still has to be considered. And now you're buying this other debt that is not offset. So, okay, now what percentage of your total income does this make up? And if that's above 34 or 39 or 44, just whatever the particular loan protocol you're using, if it's above that, then they're going to say, oh, wait, we need some more income to offset this debt, which would be the idea of a cosigner or a pay raise, more income to offset the debt. Other option would be lower debt for the same level of income. So that would be higher down payments, less expensive house. There's lots of different ways to do that. But in essence, this is often, especially when you're getting started in real estate investing, when you're personally guaranteeing loans and then you're trying to buy a house, is they're taking that debt, even though it's offset, they're taking that debt and they're considering it real debt obligation, and they're discounting your rents, usually 25%, and they're adding to that the debt obligation of your new house. And all of it might be a little tall for the lender. So thanks for bringing us that question. We get it all the time. We get it personally from the lenders all the time. And so it's near and dear to my heart. Lenders aren't, but there's a couple good ones out there. But one of the things that I do want to back up and say about lenders is that when we say lenders, we're often referring to a person. So, like, for example, one of my closest friends is a lender, and Wesley is a darn good lender. But Wesley, the face that I'm talking about when I say Wesley, is backed by like 9 different levels of protocols and isms and obligations that have to happen in order for a loan to happen. So it's easy to get frustrated with a lender, and there are things that happen with lenders that are honestly, they're very frustrating. But the protocols that lenders follow are often 0% set by the lender, and only like 10% set by anyone in that chain, except for the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Guinea Sue, Terry Joe, regional underwriters, like those people. And then like those people all report to their national level, wizards. Those people are the ones that decide what happens in the loan world. And then everyone else in this chain is just trying to follow suit and paper up files where they know that if they make a $250,000 loan, they're going to be able to get the $250,000 from Franny, Freddie, Terry, wherever. So if they don't do that, then they really need to have the capital in order to make the loans. But some number of these loan operators, they're just brokering deals. They're like how I help a buyer and a seller meet, or a landlord and a tenant meet. These lenders are helping a would-be buyer with a have money, big finance institution. They're helping them meet, and they do the underwriting. They do all the paperwork, and then they hand that off. It's not that they have the $250,000 to promise you. It's that they have the expertise to make that match and to hand you off. So in order to do that, they have to abide by all these different steps. So it's easy to get frustrated with lenders. And for sure, there are some things that lenders tend to do that is very frustrating. But when Wes, in my example, when Wes says, "Hey, we can't do this loan," easy to get angry at Wes. Not Wes's call. Not Wes's report's call. Like, it's like 9 levels between the lender that set the priorities and set the protocols and the lender. So, little word of grace to lenders. But guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this, would you subscribe so that you don't miss any of our somewhat entertaining, but definitely in edutainmental, funny, word twisting content. We love to get in and get nerdy, and I can't wait to take you out in the field and to show you some of the things we're working on. We have 2 more Airbnb properties that will get up and listed in the next week. We're working hard on getting some more properties underway, and can't wait to start going hot and heavy in our brokerage operations in Salt Lake City. That town is near and dear to my heart, and I love it. And I'd spend as much time as possible there if I was free to do so. And we're currently asking if we are. So be well. Please subscribe and check out our next video coming up tomorrow. See you guys.